Welcome to Elisha's Space. We're joined by Kristen Lane, a fitness professional and coach, as we discuss the intersection of women's health and menopause. Learn about what symptoms to look for and how to address them.
Audience, I want to welcome you to a new episode of Elisha's Space, where we are doing an exploration around life's second acts and the powerful stories of those that navigate them with grace, courage, and a bit of humor. So today we're going to be having a conversation with our guest, Kristen Lane. She is a trailblazer, in my humble opinion, where she helps to demystify and reclaim the menopause stage as women. She has over 30 years as a fitness professional and a personal journey through menopause that's both challenging and enlightening. And so, Kristen, I want to thank you for joining us today. We are so looking forward to having this conversation with you. Could you start by just kind of sharing your journey on how you were able to take your menopause journey and turn it into a platform where you're able to empower other women who are also going through these transitions as well?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Elisha, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I'm currently 53, but as I look back now, I know starting as early as age 43, I was beginning to have emotional
Mm-hmm.
symptoms that included anxiety, depression, and just a general increase in the dissatisfaction with my life. Now, coincidentally, at 43, I also got divorced, which was a very good choice for my life path at that time. But looking back now, I know that in the years leading up to that decision, my emotional state played a role in how I interacted with my ex-husband. So, it's all kind of related. But I was just kind of going along and doing great. You hear these things as you're getting older that you're going to put on a little more weight more quickly. It's going to be harder to
Mm-hmm.
take it off. So there were these physical indications that I was
Right.
aging. But in general, I felt my life was amazing. And so I interacted with physicians saying, like, why am I, dealing with these growing kind of levels of anxiety, despite being a confident and assertive person in the past, and increasing levels of sadness. And I was being prescribed antidepressants. And there were different times in my life where I chose to take that medication, and later I chose not to take that medication. And it was just kind of an overall chaos of dissatisfaction, again, despite having what I thought was an amazing life. And then everything changed. Quite funny, I think, in a way, that on Thanksgiving night of 2022, I had my first hot flash. And so all of a sudden, I could fly the flag and go to my physician and say, hey, and they would say, oh, and that's when the blood tests started in terms of trying to determine, well, where are you in this stage? So that began my experience of interacting with a care team, really, physicians, and experiencing not such great customer service in terms of really willing to listen to my concerns about how I was feeling emotionally or what my body was doing in terms of weight gain or joint pain. But really kind of having to digest a pre-recorded message about what it is I was going to have to endure. So my experience with healthcare brought me to a place where I said I needed to consolidate all of my coaching experience, my own journey through menopause, and craft a way, a tool, a series of techniques to help women through this journey. So to frame my medical experience quite quickly, I've been through 3 different OBGYNs.
Wow.
Not because, any one of them is not a good physician,
Right.
that they're fantastic. It was simply that I didn't feel that they were listening to me.
Mm.
I often felt dismissed
Mm-hmm.
and even gaslit.
Right.
The first OBGYN I worked with was quite willing to put me on a dosage of estrogen. And I'm not advocating for any kind of particular medical treatment. I think it's really everyone's decision how they want to care for themselves. But I was quite interested in hormone replacement therapy. And my first OBGYN was willing to put me on estrogen, but unwilling to put me on progesterone. So some of my physical symptoms began to decrease, but my sleep quality was abysmal. And I, as a fitness person, would wear a Garmin watch, which is a wrist based heart rate monitor. I use it all the time. It's been on my wrist for, I don't know, now probably 4 years. So I have a tremendous amount of sleep data. And I had not had meaningful REM sleep for over a year.
Wow.
And, as a human being, it's very difficult to cope with life's challenges when you're not getting REM sleep. I mean, I think one of the first techniques when they capture somebody is they don't let them sleep when they want to try to get
Right.
some
Right.
kind of
It's a form of
information out of them
torture.
and break them down. It is a form of torture. So I didn't appreciate that I literally had to cry to my first OBGYN to get my first prescription of progesterone. And then once I did, it seemed like overnight difference in the quality of my sleep just shot up. And so many things within the emotional realm started to improve. And that was my first indication that, this system seems a little messed up, but I'm going to find myself a new OBGYN. And the reason that I did that is because the emotional symptoms began to become so obvious that they turned into physical symptoms. I would be on the track with a client, in like the middle of the day and be fighting back tears. There was no logical reason for me to cry, but my body really wanted to. And I said, this just doesn't, I can't live this way. This doesn't seem like the quality of life that I should accept.
Right.
So I found a new OBGYN. And again, I got a little bit out of that interaction in terms of moving towards my outcome goals. She increased my estrogen level. And it was the combination of that change and the previous levels that I was being prescribed that everything just started to become clear. I had noticeably less brain fog, felt sharp again. There was just a fantastic change. However, this OBGYN's bedside manner was abysmal. And I was particularly at this point concerned about weight gain around my midsection. Because from that date, that Thanksgiving night, to about late February, early March of this year, my waist had increased by 8 inches.
Wow.
My waist size. Yeah. And I live what you could describe as a pretty active life. And I make probably 90% of my own meals. I mean, I live and work in the realm of fitness and nutrition. So it's like it's on the forefront of what I'm looking at, and I was very concerned about my metabolic health.
I would be too.
And
right.
it was like impossible to get her to care about that. And in fact, she suggested that I get liposuction.
Oh, wow.
which was, not very effective at visceral fat, at all. And being told as a woman that your genes define what your body has to look like, just didn't seem like it made logical sense to me.
Right.
So I said, thank you very much for prescribing all of the blood tests that I needed. I came up with some outcome goals going into that meeting after having previously bad experiences. And I took that information to a third OBGYN, and I've had thus far a very good relationship. But I came out of all of that saying we could all do better. And as a coach, I feel like I'm in the perfect place and time to provide this resource really for women.
I think it's so needed. I really, really do think it's so needed because I don't think there's just not enough information out there. You think, am I perimenopausal now? Or am I in my menopause stage? I mean, there's so much misinformation that's out there. And even when you tie it to anxiety and things of that nature, there's the whole mind body connection too. And it can affect you on a cellular level. So if you're already experiencing, or if you have a history of experiencing anxiety and depression, and then you have the hormones that are adding to that, that are tied to what is connected with the menopause symptoms or the journey that you're on, and you think, is it me? Like what you were saying about your ex-husband when you guys were in your communications. And then you're realizing, well, actually, I was going through something physically. So there's just not enough information out there. And I'm so glad that you're going to be shedding some more light on this on the show. What would you say are some common emotional and mental challenges that women face during menopause?
It's a wonderful question. And I want to make sure your audience understands that when we're going into the zone of perimenopause and then entering menopause, what we're talking about is not just the existence of some or all of these symptoms, but it's an increase
Right.
over time.
Mm-hmm.
They become more severe. And this could include anxiety, which could even lead to panic.
Right.
Of course, depression, irritability.
Mm-hmm.
Irritability can play a huge role in our personal relationships and how we show up for the people that we care and love.
Mm-hmm.
Mood swings, recognizing that you're having sharp highs and sharp lows, loss of confidence, loss of self-esteem,
Right.
poor ability to concentrate. There is an area of our professional lives that can suffer. And that's all related to decrease in estrogen levels and how that happens, as you talked about, biochemically in the body. Brain fog and forgetfulness, irritability, sadness, and low libido is a known symptom.
I'm glad that you're talking about that because I hear that quite often with women that are in either perimenopausal or menopausal state, and people come in for couples counseling. And when they come in for couples counseling, that always comes up about the differing sex drives and things of that nature for the couple. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that is it's a real concern. And I've asked the question, could it be tied? Where are you in your journey when it comes to menopause? Where are you in your journey when I talk to the women? And a lot of women don't know.
Don't even know.
They don't even know, which is sad.
Yeah. There is something I want to bring up, and I feel like this is an important point.
Sure.
As a people, I think we need to recognize this is a universal experience.
Right.
Literally, every woman on earth is going to experience this.
Yeah.
And if you compare that known fact to exactly as you talked about, the lack of awareness and knowledge of how it affects so many aspects of our lives, and then you consider all the demands that women have placed upon them, it's a very important subject that I think needs to be really just opened up, unpacked, shine a bright light on it. Like, let's let everybody know. And I'm hopeful we get an opportunity to talk to the younger population of what to know and expect, so we can leverage this experience to help improve theirs.
Quite often I tell clientele that exercise, movement helps with mood. And so, as someone who's in fitness, who is a fitness coach, and I know you had talked about this is your world, how do you think movement influences emotional and mental wellness during menopause?
It's a great question. And the number one thing I want to state is that cardio fitness plays a huge role in our emotional health in menopause. And when I bring up the term cardio fitness, depending on your age, different cardio exercise images pop into your mind. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1989. Jane Fonda, jazzercise, aerobics, Zumba, right? Step aerobics, you name it. The Reebok step, etc.
Physical.
Physical. Oh my gosh. Leg warmers, cut the shoulders off. I'm there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But and there's science behind this, not just within this realm. I'll talk about that in a second. That there's a specific type of cardio exercise that we call zone 2 cardio. That is a type of exercise we pursue for long periods of time. That if you do that type of exercise on a regular basis, it has a positive impact on our moods by having a negating impact on our cortisol levels, that fight or flight hormone. So, when we talk about fitness, people think, oh, I'm going to the gym, lifting weights. There are people there are mirrors or whatever. I'm not even talking about right now. The single best thing you could do for your emotional health in menopause is get outside and go for a walk.
Right.
Why a walk? A walk is a low-level cardio attempt in a modality that's going to raise your heart rate to what we call zone 2, which is defined as 60% of your maximum heart rate. And there are formulas for this, or again, you could do a watch like a Garmin or a Fitbit, and it'll you punch in your age, etc., and it'll start to tell you what your zones are.
Mm-hmm.
And you pursue this type of cardio activity for long periods of time. So, for example, when I'm working with a client in this age range and within my program, our first cardio goal is 45 minutes nonstop. Our second cardio goal, we keep adding 15-minute increments until we can get to over 2 hours of nonstop movement. And it's not a high level output event, because if you think for a second, like these high intensity interval training classes, these HIIT classes,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all over the place. You could step into a studio and go take a class. In those exercise classes, your heart rate is going to go way into zone 5, which we might call 90% of your maximum heart rate. You're probably even anaerobic at this point in time, and then it's going to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to go up, and then it's going to come down. And what that does is it burns calories,
Mm-hmm.
more calories over a greater period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But that also mimics the fight and flight hormonal response that we are already living in menopause.
Right.
So it does us no good. It almost like works against us in this zone. So my thing with fitness at this level is that women need to be willing to understand we're going to learn a whole new way to work with our body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if it does not make any sense or if you feel like a beginner. I actually think there's strength in embracing a beginner mindset
Mm-hmm.
multiple times in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to pursue cardio at a low level, and it's going to have a cognitive and emotional benefit to us. So that's my number one thing. And this term zone 2 training is it's out there. If you look it up, and it's very helpful at this zone. But it's also great at establishing a cardio base.
Mm.
So if you look at some of the best cyclists on the Tour de France, are they 25 years old? Yes. Are they born for cycling? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Entirely true. But what they are doing is they are spending 70% of their training time in zone 2, in their zone 2. And it builds this very wide base of cardiovascular capacity. And then intermittently, they train in these extremely high outputs. And so they're able to perform better over these extremely intense endurance challenges. So it's not just for us menopause ladies, it's also for everyone. So zone 2 is where it's at. And the second thing I want to say about fitness during menopause is don't underestimate the value of feeling strong.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you feel strong is by strength training.
Mm-hmm.
And within the broad umbrella of strength training, my personal approach is functional fitness, which is using weights in kind of complex movement patterns so that you develop the capacity to be quite resilient in the world and how a human moves and, pick up grandchildren and garden and move things around. But there are tremendous cascade of positive events that follow feeling strong. You approach life differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an important aspect at this time.
When you talked about zone 2, that is actually what I encourage, like the walks or doing things for longer periods of times and increments within that zone. I don't necessarily suggest they do high impact unless you have a goal for something. Maybe you're training for something. So I think you make a really good point because, this is true for menopause, but it's also just true in general. If you're feeling blue or if you're feeling anxiety, you need a way to get it out. Your body can be in a state of fight or flight. And even though you're not in danger, your body doesn't know that. And so you need to kind of have a way to kind of express that, and all of the happy feelings and things like that that comes with that is much better than trying to do something that's self-medication, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think what you're saying is very, very important, and people need to hear that it's really important. All it takes is like a walk around the block or whatever it is you want to do, or a walk in the park.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
I want to take this opportunity to make an appeal for nature.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Park City, Utah. Of course, I've self-selected a life in the mountains surrounded by trails and trees that move in the wind, and there's a river that I can listen to. There's a tremendous benefit to connecting with your environment. Could be in
Absolutely.
a park where there are birds. If you're fortunate enough to have a nature trail near you or anything that gets you into a natural environment, I feel like that exponentially improves or increases the
Mhm.
value of getting out and going for a walk.
Right.
So I highly recommend people giving nature a try. It's wonderful.
And that also feeds into connection too, and with grounding as well. It helps you to get more centered. A lot of times with that anxiety, if you're going through a menopause journey, we already addressed that it's not uncommon for depression and anxiety to go up or things around that to go up. And when you're around nature, it's a grounding that is happening. When you're going out for a walk, when you're in your garden, even, and the physical act
Mhm.
touching the ground, that is a reconnection. And within that, you're being
Mhm.
reminded, I can do this, or it's not as big as I
Mhm.
think it is. It helps keep you centered. And I think that's so
Yeah.
important. Deep breathing also helps, audience. I can't talk about deep breathing enough. Taking a moment, taking a pause, and just kind of doing some deep breathing exercises helps when it comes to dealing with
Yeah.
depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And also, when you talked about strength training too, that is so important. It's almost like you're getting to know yourself again.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And built into that getting to know you, I believe, is a necessary willingness to accept the new you.
Right.
And it's through that mindset that we get to loving this new version of ourselves.
Hmm.
It's essential, I think.
And audience, if you can think of it this way too, it's like we go from being a baby to a toddler, and in each of those stages, you're getting to know a new you. You go from toddler to preteen, and all the hormones and things that goes through that. We go through body changes when we become an adult, especially if you're a mother. You go through body changes after you have the child, not just during. And then I think this stage here is another transition, especially as women. I think we're so amazing. I mean, I think men are amazing too, but I want to be fair. But
Yeah. Yeah.
women, we are so amazing. But the things that I'll say it, we are givers of life. And we're going through another transition in our life where we can embrace and enjoy what we've done in the past, but also embrace what we have going on within our universe in this present stage that we're in. And I think part of the anxiety and depression people sometimes feel is looking back. But I would say, look at what you have to look forward to.
Yeah. It's a very powerful message. I also think as women, we need to appreciate our environment that we're surrounded by now.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're coming at it from the standpoint of these hormone levels changing how we're reacting to things,
Mm.
and then we digest a stream of comparison based, social media engagement, for example,
Right.
you can really, I think, do damage for yourself
Hmm.
and create a negative, narrative in your mind that otherwise wouldn't really need to be there.
Absolutely. What would you say are some key strategies that you advocate for maintaining or improving mental and emotional wellness during the stage of time? I know you talked about social media. I know we've talked about movement. What are
Mhm.
some other things?
I think that this is an opportunity for a friendly wake up call. I think the first thing is women need to be empowered to find a physician that prioritizes their desired health outcomes.
And also someone that hears
I
them.
can't, yes, I can't stress this enough.
Hmm.
If you're interacting with a physician and you begin to hear any of this kind of message of, well, this is what happens, say thank you very much and know in the back of your mind, we can do better.
Right.
And you should want better for yourself. The hormone imbalance is not going to go away. It's there.
Hmm.
It is the
I
truth
hear
of our
disappointment from
biology.
other women who are listening to this podcast. They're probably,
You know,
you mean it's never going to go away? But go ahead.
it's 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 not it's
Mhm.
there. Like there's no use
Uh-huh.
denying our own health care because it's inconvenient for a system that's not quite set up yet to help us.
Yeah.
So we need to be ready to advocate for ourselves. And I really would want to empower women to take stock of what works in their life right now. and consider turning up the volume on those aspects. Maybe it's people, maybe it's routines, maybe it's groups of people, and consider turning down the volume in the areas that aren't serving you. So really, it's a call to women to embrace the ability to take ownership of your health by prioritizing improving these symptoms that are associated with this time zone.
Okay. I think that's great. That's similar to what I tell people as well, is find things that bring you joy or things that you would like to
Sure.
try that you think could bring you joy and elevate that up more. You only live once.
I know.
So why not do it intentionally experiencing joy?
Yeah, it's great.
Your program, so we've touched on this, Kristen, but we haven't really
Mhm.
talked about it. You have a program, it's called In the Moment, and it emphasizes not just individual wellness, but also community support. Can you talk about how important that is when it comes to navigating emotional and the mental aspects of menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, my coaching perspective is that community is essential.
Right.
Earlier we talked about how the slide of emotions during this time is increased feelings of isolation because you feel so alone, you feel so misunderstood, etc. And feeling isolated in your life is, somewhat easy to imagine, especially if you've spent your life building a great life for yourself and your family.
Mm-hmm.
The guilt sometimes associated with simultaneously having this great life and being increasingly sad is very hard to shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very hard to shoulder. And a community of peers creates a safe space to see in others what you are experiencing and what you have experienced. And it creates a wonderful moment to have compassion for yourself. And especially if you're the type of person, as I am, and I'm sure many of your listeners are, where you have tried to live a life of kindness towards other people.
Right.
And so I sometimes think that in this menopause zone, our internal dialogue of ourselves is not what we would say to a person in need or a friend of ours. We would actually be much more caring and empathetic towards someone else than we sometimes demonstrate for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the right kind of group setting creates that moment of enlightened compassion, if you will. And I think that along with, as a person who's tried to live a life of kindness that helps others, there's this wonderful thing that happens in a group setting where there's this opportunity to help others. And this is how I describe it. When I listen, I learn. But when I share, I teach.
Mm.
And so coming together with other women who are at different stages creates not just an opportunity to improve ourselves, but to participate in the improvement of others. And it brings such a more rewarding feeling to the process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I absolutely love that. We're getting ready to wind things down as far as the podcast is concerned. Could you give us an overview of In This Moment Menopause Empowerment Blueprint? We just briefly touched about it. I think this is so needed. Can you talk a little bit more about what you have that you're offering?
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you so much for asking. So, my approach to fitness really is based on four core areas of our life: our physical wellness, our emotional and mental wellness, our mind body connection, and our social connection. And so, the Menopause Empowerment Blueprint is a 12-week program that is going to impact participants' lives in all of those four areas. And we're going to do it in a way that escalates each month as we go through this kind of shared experience. Phase one is laying the foundation in all of these areas to get to phase two, where we are going to rewrite this narrative in each of these areas. And phase three is an area where we now begin to think with an entirely new set of limitations, and we can change the trajectory of our lives. So within those 12 weeks, there are weekly strength training workouts. There are corrective exercise workouts if people find that they need that, if they have posture issues or joint issues. and those kinds of things. There's a nutrition plan that's included in the program that's designed to create a caloric deficit without energy spikes. So it becomes very helpful to the emotional aspect of this whole program, because I think our food choices and our how we fuel our body can have an impact on our mood swings and our sense of resilience, etc. So that's kind of interwound in there. There are 9 group development calls, 6 one-on-one calls to keep people on track, help answer any specific needs that they have. And this whole process will begin with a detailed movement analysis and goal setting, so we can really understand where people are starting from and help to almost project manage what our goal outcomes could be for us over the time period. Each phase will contain a workbook for every participant. And the best thing is that the class size is going to be limited to 10 people. So it's never outside of, a size where everybody is going to feel as if they, gain 9 new friends over the course of 12 weeks.
You talk about so many personal things when you're in this journey, this menopause journey. I think having a small number is very important.
Mm-hmm.
How can listeners get involved or start implementing some of the strategies that we've talked about for better emotional and mental wellness during menopause? How can they get connected to you if they're interested in learning more?
Well, you can check out my website, which is www.inthemoment.vip. Everybody's welcome to email me. I'm Coach K at inthemoment.vip. And on my website, people can read a little more about the program, read a little more about me. One of the things that I have on my website that I think is a great place for people to start is a self-care checkup.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a document you're going to download, print it out, and just try to evaluate A, what you think self-care is, and B, how much of it you do for yourself on a weekly basis. And there's an aspect to self-care that I think is related to our current culture and social media, that we tend to think of self-care as something that's, extravagant and expensive. And my program is based on this idea that self-care are those steps that you take to improve your health. And this is a time when we really want to improve our health. So, the checkup will get people to start thinking about things, and then that'll give them a feel of what this program might be like and what working with me might feel like. So that was where I would go.
Okay. Audience, I will have all of her information in the show notes. So you'll see the link to her website in the show notes. I have a question. Is the class self-paced, or is this something that they would sign up for and attend with you in person as well as virtually?
So the Menopause Empowerment Blueprint is, we are going to go as a group. We're going to all start at the same time, and we're going to all finish at the same time. I'm running one program in the fall of 2024, and the second is scheduled for winter 24, 25.
So do one a quarter, like one every 3 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense because it's 12 weeks. So, and it's virtual, or do you do in person as well?
So this program is virtual.
Okay.
I think that there's a possibility in the summer for an in-person retreat, particularly in an easily accessible town like Park City, where we could have an opportunity for 2 classes to come together, and maybe even, some friends, and take an opportunity to do some in-person exploration of the topics that we cover in the group.
Okay. So audience, you heard it. There's going to be a retreat even. So
let's do it. Everybody just come to Park City.
And we know it's a beautiful state because we heard all about the nature and stuff. So listen, if anything we talked about resonated with you, I hope that you pick something up. And if you're experiencing something and you're thinking, am I a little bit off the wall here? Know that you're not. Know that this is part of the journey, and part of the journey is embracing where you're at and moving forward in that. I hope that it gives you greater peace and maybe even some greater encouragement, and knowing that this is just part of the journey and you're going to get through it. We as women, we are so dynamic, and it is just amazing to me how our bodies change and shift in these different seasons and how we grow as a result of it. So embrace this healing as you go into your healing journey. Take a look at Kristen's class. I am really, really endorsing this because I think it will help so many people. And again, be well. Thank you for joining us today at Elisha Space.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. Now go move forward in your healing journey.